So, this morning, Aaron came up to me and he said, "What's the title of your keynote?" I'm like, I haven't really started thinking about my keynote yet, so it's a keynote without any title. I wanted to start by saying that last weekend I went to a wedding in Australia, and I was a friend of my daughter's, and like all good men, young men, he likes his fires. So we had one. This is the fire getting going, the bonfire in the background. The guy, we're looking at his back, it's a farmer. It's at his farm, he's a local fireman, so it was okay. I mean, any later in the year and we'd be massively freaking about a fire, and then the flames got up to 7 or 8 metres at one stage, because we all love a good fire. Well, it was pretty hot. All right, enough of that. Okay. So, thank you for coming to DevDays. I love DevDays. It's great to be here, and I really enjoyed DevDays as I usually do, as I always do. We don't have a FHIR meeting quite like DevDays anywhere else. And I've really enjoyed the keynotes, and I'm going to comment on the keynotes. And first of all, I want to start talking about tinkering. Tinkering. Because see, tinkering is what we're doing with the healthcare system, right? We're tinkering with the healthcare system itself. I'm going to come back to that. But I was thinking about tinkering, I thought, let's start here. This is a map from James Agnew. It's the hit rate on James Test Happy server from around the world by frequency. So number of IPs. That's right, isn't it, James? Yeah, number of IP addresses. It's a really interesting map. I don't know, does anybody here want to volunteer anything interesting that they can see here? Sorry? Yeah, the East Coast of America loves happy, but there's some country that loves happy more. Yeah, well, where's the Indians? I tell you, they've always been big time scorers on this, but they never actually surface. So I feel as though we need to get some good FHIR community stuff going in India. What else did anyone identify a dot that identifies a specific company that is interested in FHIR? Tromsø. Dips. There's no one here from Dips this year, is there? But there's few companies in the world that are in such a strange place that they stand out all by themselves. Anything else of interest? South America, nothing. Plenty of stuff. Well, you can almost tell where Diego lives. It's just there. Down there. All right. I didn't find any dots out in the middle of the ocean. Well, I mean, there's this one, but that's Hawaii. Okay, so that was a bit of fun. But there's plenty of countries in which there's no dots. So it's like we've still got unfinished business here. We can say that we're done when every country in the world's got a dot on James' happy map. All right. But then I was thinking more about tinkering, and so I asked Simone if she could dig up an old piece of tinkering and bring it back to life, and so she did. So Simone, can you come up and tell us about this? You wanted this one? No.
That doesn't show up. There you go. So this bit of tinkering dates back to 2015, to the Atlanta Connectathon. And as you can see, we were doing stuff basically, the serious stuff we were coming to do was doing the V2 mapping that I talked about earlier today. But an idea that came up was to just hook into the Twitter stream. And whenever someone tweets with using the hashtag FHIR, we would get a message and map it to a patient resource and create a new patient resource on the server. And I just had this mapping running, and so right now you can see all of the Twitter users that have been tweeting with the hashtag FHIR in the past couple of minutes or hours. You can see them all show up on Grahame's server with their avatar picture and their username. And you can actually search by name. So if you go to the R2 endpoint of Grahame's server and search for a patient with your Twitter username, you should see a patient pop up with your avatar and the matching name. So feel free to try it, but please note it's probably not going to work in a couple of hours or after this is over, because it is running locally on my laptop. So as soon as I close my laptop, it's not going to work anymore. So, but basically what we did is just using a global leaf integration engine for this kind of thing. And you may ask yourself why we did it, and the answer is because we can.
And if you go look on my server and you look at the communication resource, you'll discover that Simone surfaced a bug on my server that I haven't had time to fix since she pointed it out. So the communication resources are not probably connected up to the patient resources, but they're there. And in fact, when I was looking at the start of this, here we have the last tweet before I started my presentation. Very good presentation from none other than Simone. All right, so that was a bit of fun. But from Rolf's presentation, I really wanted to emphasize APIs are interfaces to people. There's a wonderful way to express what it is that we do, about interfacing to people. And some of you will have heard me before. Interoperability is all about the people, and FHIR is all about the community. And then we heard from Al about Google Brain, and that's what I've had the most comment about. That was kind of unexpected for most people. It's pretty cool, wasn't it? So I want to actually, watching that presentation, crystallise something for me that I've been thinking about a little bit, but it hadn't really come clear in my head. Some of you will be familiar with this diagram, which I stole from Renee's slides. We talk about paradigms in FHIR, paradigms of exchange and interaction and use of FHIR. We mostly focus on REST, but we have the document paradigm, we have the messaging paradigm, but I've realised when I was watching AL that we need to add a fourth, a storage, database, data storage paradigm. We talk about storing data directly as FHIR resources. It's a native use of FHIR. So we need to add this to our picture and start thinking about this and being part of our picture. It's not... What? Okay. Nah. Nah. Well, let's just stick to this for now. And the other thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this is, it was pretty awesome watching AL doing live SQL queries against FHIR, a big stack of FHIR resources. And so I had a chat to him afterwards, and what we're hoping to do is to get up a public available endpoint where you can just go and do it yourself. Write your own SQL queries against probably a Cynthia-derived data set using the same stack as AL was demonstrating on. And hopefully we can get that going. It's not clear that it's not sorted that we can. I would like to demo it right now, but just can't get everything in sequence. But hopefully we can get that up, and that would be really cool. And I'd like to add that to our thinking. All right, and then we just heard from Mo about OpenAPI. And I was going to comment about OpenAPI and what we were going to do, but then they would ask me the question, so I said what I was going to say before. So, moving on then. I was talking to a couple of people last night while I was wandering around the Heineken, which is a great place for dinner. And a few people commented to me about the way DevDays runs. And the DevDays meeting is a technical meeting. It's about a technical show, which is... No, actually, FHIR is not really a technical thing. FHIR is a community. It's about people. It's about people talking to each other, and we get lots of opportunity to do that here at DevDays. And it's one of the great things of DevDays. And I asked around the team before the meeting, you know, is there anything I should talk about before the keynote, about during the keynote? And of course, what we all said was we love DevDays, and we want to recognise some people. So, Marita, if you'd come forward, please. This is Marita's first year taking over as... So, thank you, Marita, and we look forward to lots more. And while I'm at this, if you're wearing a FHIR top, a light blue top, or a dark blue top, can you come out the front, please? You miss out. So this, and the light blue tops, come on, come on. Hey Simone, can you take a photo for me? All right, so this is if you're, you know, every year the team's bigger because there's more people here and it's more work and you work. Thanks guys, great job. Yeah. All right. Okay, thanks for coming on. So yeah, we love DevDays. So I need to draw your attention to, just in case you haven't yet heard about DevDays in Boston next year, an excuse for all Europeans to go all the way over to the USA. And also, of course, we'll be back here in Amsterdam in November 14 to 16 next year. You know, I said to Ren, it's my wedding anniversary on November the 14th, so I'm typically away from home on my wedding anniversary. And it's not that best of a good thing. It's not like I don't travel very much anyway. So I just said to Kath, you know, you just have to come again next year. So, but I was in trouble this year because it's my 25th wedding anniversary and I was away from home. But that's how much I love DevDays. I came here. All right, okay. So moving on then. There's a few things I want to talk about with regard to Release 4. So our current work focus is around finishing off and publishing Release 4. As you all know, that'll be the first normative release of FHIR. And that means that some small part of FHIR will be normative. We have about 4 weeks left, maybe 3 actually, to choose what is a candidate for going normative. So if you have an opinion about that, you need to express that opinion to us, to the team, to the FHIR community, before we make our final decision in early December. So that's the first normative timeline that we've had in FHIR. If it doesn't get up and listed as normative in the December draft ballot release, then it won't be normative, won't be candidate for normative. Things that are candidate for normative can become uncandidates, but they can't get elevated after that. We need a good long run at normative. So if you have an opinion about that, let us know about it. One thing I want to seek your support for. Here it is. We will shortly be issuing a request for support from people around the world to help us by going to this form on my server and filling out the details of a coverage for a typical person with public or private, whatever you have in your country, various private health insurances, if there's veterans insurance, that too. We want to actually get a good survey of a worldwide perspective of what people use in insurance coverage. The committee has a fairly controversial situation. They can't narrow it down and get a clear picture. So we're seeking input from people all around the world to go here and fill out their details. So you need to unidentify yourself, but you need to fill out the kind of details that you have on when you register your health insurance form. And a lot of us go, well, I don't really know, I just hand my card over. So if you could, for us, find someone in your country who does know this stuff and get them to fill some of these out for us, because hopefully we can get, my take on the coverage resource is not particularly very useful, and one of the things, so this is a survey to find out what it is that we need to be useful. So we would, hopefully will come out next week. It would be really, really appreciated if you helped us with that. And the coverage resource actually turns out in most countries, we care about the coverage resource and we need to get this right. Also, there's another thing that I need to talk about. So, how many people here have heard about the Argonaut interface? Yeah, I'm just exercising your arms here. Now, if you haven't, then the Argonaut interface is the interface developed by the US vendors around patient access to data. It's a bit more than patient access, but patient access to data. The US vendors are now starting to roll that out across the world. They're bringing it to Australia. It's available in Europe already in some places. That presents an interesting new situation for affiliates. What do we do about that as affiliates? So in Australia, we've agreed that we're going to work with the US vendors to clarify a minimal set of changes that they need to make to meet Australian requirements. And we're going to publish that on their behalf. So this is the Australian take on Argonaut that they implement in Argonaut and that we encourage anybody else to implement as well, so they can leverage their work, because we, like most other countries, have the multinationals providing services in Australia. So any of you here who are from European affiliates, now is the time to start asking yourself, well, how do we think that's going to work in our country? So you need to think about that. But that's certainly something not to let slip by and let standards happen to you. It would be kind of ironic for the standards to be people to let standards happen to them. Finally, on the subject of affiliates, we are continuing to develop and stabilise a tooling framework, ecosystem for publishing, supporting affiliates and implementation projects, publishing implementation guides and leveraging those in a variety of directions, one of which is OpenAPI. It's work in progress, but it's gradually stabilising, and we have lots of support this year to finish that task off. So we're getting there. That brings me to the subject of the FHIR Foundation. The FHIR Foundation, here is the website for the FHIR Foundation. The FHIR Foundation is a partner to HL7. So HL7, for those of you who didn't hear me about this earlier this week, HL7 publishes the standard. HL7 exists to publish standards, and all our processes and procedures are geared towards publishing highly reviewed documents. But if you look across the FHIR community, the stuff that's happening here, we have way more interests than publishing reviewed documents. And HL7 is not good at those other things because it's so good at what it does. And so the FHIR Foundation, we've created the FHIR Foundation to take governance around those other things. Things like providing all the FHIR.org services, chat.fhir.org and the website and so forth. And we need to be building that up still and building out our support for the community. And so, and in addition, publishing implementation guides that don't need to be balloted, working with the community to provide ongoing services. That's what the FHIR Foundation does. We have and acknowledge very considerable support from Google for all of our cloud computing requirements, and we thank Google for that. And we're also now open for members. So you can see this here, become a member. So if you become a member, it's an individual thing. You as an individual can become a member. If you become a member, you get a digital badge that says, I'm a member. I can be happy because I'm supporting the FHIR community. So it's basically the technical infrastructure that runs the community and the legal and accounting liabilities to actually exist to be able to do that. And then as a member, you get access to a few interesting member services, one of which is that each month I write a report that's available to the FHIR Foundation members about activities within the FHIR community. And actually, there's nowhere else that you can get that push information about what's going on in the FHIR community. And you get access to the Foundation Forum and the Marketplace. And those are two discussion forums where we talk about what the Foundation does. Well, we will. We haven't actually started any discussions there yet. And also a Marketplace, because what happens is, on a regular basis, and growing increasingly often, someone will contact me and say, hey, I need someone to do some contract FHIR work for me. Maybe it's a company or maybe it's an individual. And I go, well, where are you in the world? What is it that you want? And we sort of clarify what they want. And I think, well, who in the community would be interested? So the first thing I do is post it to the Marketplace. So the first look for anything like that is there. So if you're interested in that, that's a member service. And there's a few other rights, like voting for board members and so forth, so we're still building the FHIR community. So I invite all of you to become individual members of the FHIR Foundation and join in supporting the work that we do. It's $250 US, whatever your local currency is, a year to be a member. You know what, I haven't talked about corporate membership yet. We're still trying to figure out what corporate membership would be, and a few people asked me about that and said they like to ka-ching lots of money to us, and we think that's a great idea, but we haven't figured out exactly how that should work, because we want to know if people are going to give us money, we need to give them value. Right? We want to give people value for money, but we are looking for some corporate sponsorship for specific activities. I need a webmaster who can take over the website and build out some applications on the website to help the community. We have the need to continue working with the registry, which I'll talk about in a second, and there's a few other sponsorship roles as well. So if you think your company might be interested, come and have a chat to me about that, and we'll be looking for contributions for sponsorship opportunities. Now, note that I gave Google a recognition. Google get real good value for that, given how much money you can blow on pointless media advertising and community events. And every time we talk about FHIR Foundation, I give Google a plug. It could be you too. Okay. All right, now I do want to talk about certification. You could earn yourself this badge. You could be certified as FHIR proficient. You could run around saying to people, I really know what FHIR is about. And to prove it, I am FHIR certified HL7 FHIR proficient. In order to do that, you need to go to the HL7 website and sign up and pay some money, which off the top of my head I don't even know how much it is, but it's not that much. And then you do a test. And you can do the test at a testing centre in the nearest city near you, or you can do it at home with them watching you by video camera to make sure that you're not, I don't know, looking at cheating or something like that. But it's just a series of questions about the FHIR specification. If you've sat here and exchanged FHIR resources, you know half of what you need to know. You also need to know a little about licensing and about scope and who manages FHIR, stuff like that. If you know those things, you can pass the test and become certified FHIR proficient. And it does help when it comes to jobs and contracting in what's, by observation, starting to be a pretty high turnover world in health as FHIR is starting to bite, and I'll come back to that too. So I encourage you all to consider getting certification. You don't need to be at HL7 meeting. That's new because we've always only ever done it before at HL7 meetings, but now we have the infrastructure not to. Finally, I want to tell you about, with the FHIR Foundation, one of the things the FHIR Foundation runs is the FHIR registry. And so that is a central point where all of us can register profiles, value sets, code systems, concept maps, example resources, implementation guides, so that everybody can see, go and search and find what everybody else is doing. And encourage you, first of all, if you're thinking to yourself, hang on, I'm doing a patient care management process. The first place to go is to go to the registry and say, what is anybody else doing in that space? And we still need to build it up to help make it useful, but it's starting to become the first place to look. I'm interested in profiling patient for my country. What have the other countries done? Well, that's really easy to answer. You can go and look at most of the national profiles on the registry. And we're going to start encouraging people to actually upload their content. Right now you can go to the registry, registry.FHIR.org, and see what is effectively a prototype. It's the functional system filled with provisional data while we've got the system nailed, and now we're nailing down the data policies. And we're nearly there, and so that'll be very soon. And so that's another important activity of the FHIR Foundation. All right. Now I have an unhappy task. I have to tell you about this. I am not amused, and Renee is going to get it at some point. Because see, it's not about me. But you could be forgiven when you look at this for thinking it is about me, but it's not. And I argued with Renee about this. I said, it has to be about the team, it has to be about the community. But he said, no, it's got to be a single person. So I had to take the sword on the sword and let it be about me. But here you are. Where's Grahame? And you're all going to get a poster there out there in the foyer for you to grab when you leave. And well, this is a terrible thing about social media, see, because it used to be that my two lives were entirely separate. There was my professional life and dealing with Renee's gimmicks, and there was my family. But then my daughter got Twitter, and the first thing she did was follow me. So now anything that any of you tweet about me goes straight to my daughter. And do you want to, I can't tell you how funny my family thinks the whole Jedi Knight thing on the calendar is. And people come to visit us regularly, and they get trotted out and shown Grahame as a firefighter or a Jedi Knight, and Renee is going to get it sometime. So anyway, do pick up this and show it to your kids and tell them how silly we all are. But that brings me to the subject of the community. Whenever I talk about FHIR to audiences around the world, and it seems as if I'm doing more and more of that. In fact, I am doing more and more of that. I've now passed my globe-trotting mother in terms of number of countries visited, and I'm just warming up. Whenever I go and I present, what I tell them is that people out there focus on FHIR as a technical specification, but it misses the point. FHIR is a community first. It's us here and all other meetings that we have, and all the people who participate in social media but can't make the meetings because they don't have the money, don't have the corporate sponsorship or support to make the meetings, and they live in Africa or wherever, although there's not that many of them in Africa, as you saw from the map before. All of us are the FHIR community. And what is it that we share? We share a belief that getting involved in FHIR, contributing to FHIR, is a worthy endeavour. And some people are involved simply because they have to for their job. But you know, a lot of people never put back into the community. But there's people who do it, they have to do it for their job, and then they start going, hey, it doesn't work. And instead of just going and complaining to their boss that he made them use something that doesn't work, they come to us and say, but this doesn't actually work, which means they're actually interested in letting us know that we could be better. Sometimes it's a bit tiring when you have this all the time coming at you. You just have to say, no, people are not, they sound like they're whining, and it's easy to sound like you're whining, but actually coming to tell us because they care. And so that's great. And so that's what the community is built out of. People who once upon a time cared and realised that we weren't good enough as we were, and then they come and they wanted to contribute, and we said, great, come in, come to Connectathons, come to HL7 meetings. Not necessarily coming to HL7 meetings. The next HL7 meeting is in New Orleans, and we're holding a Connectathon. And I just want to show you some of the things that are on the table for that Connectathon. Let's make this a bit bigger. And you know, if you go back and compare our original Connectathon tracks with where we are now, our original Connectathon tracks were very technically focused, very API focused. How does the API work? How does OAuth work? How does search work? How does patch work? But increasingly we don't have those technical tracks anymore. We get more and more outcome-focused tracks about case reporting, genomics, using FHIR for catalogs, and patient matching, for instance, provider directory. So, you know, that represents the gradual growth and maturity of the FHIR community. Lloyd said that I should draw you particular attention to this particular track, the versioned API track. We increasingly hear that one of the issues we need to address, act proactively rather than reluctantly, is versioning. And so the version API track is the first step in that, becoming proactive around that subject. Well, I mean, it's not like we don't invest heavily in the work. James, myself, the .NET guys, and others, we still maintain the old versions of the libraries, and we put a lot of work, a lot of my time goes into supporting old versions of the specification. I support versions 1, 2, releases DSTU1, DSTU2, STU3, the current version, and a couple of intermediate versions. It's kind of boring, supporting 6 forks of the code. And others support that kind of stuff. We put a lot of work into supporting old versions, and we believe in supporting old versions. And I spent a month getting all of the release 2 to release 3 maps in place. So we invest deeply in this. It's not like we don't care, but we can do more. And so I invite you all to pay attention to this track, and if you are able to attend us in New Orleans in January, by all means do. We'd love to see you there. But since we're over in Europe, if you're not able to attend, you can certainly attend remote Connectathon tracks remotely. You can take part in them and be part of the discussion on chat.file.org and implement them and be part, and you don't have to be there to still make an impact. So if you can't, it's still worth playing a part. If you can't do that, we are coming back to Europe. So in May, the full HL7 meeting and full HL7 Connectathon will be in Cologne, in Germany, and I invite you all to come and join us there for the Connectathon and for the follow-up working group meeting through the week after. We're all looking forward to going back to Cologne. It's 10, 12 years since we were in Cologne, 10 or something. Great place to go, and I'm really looking forward to it, and partly because my wife's coming, so I'm not in trouble for that one. On the subject of the community, if you have any media exposure at all right now, you'll be aware of ongoing troubles that some communities are having around code of conduct. And so I just wanted to draw your attention, not that we have any problems, which is good, but I did want to draw your attention to the code of conduct here. So I hope that you've all read this. There's no way we're going to kick you out if you haven't, but I encourage everyone to read this at least once and be aware that we do have a code of conduct, and there's no reason to put up with people who don't conform to the code of conduct. I don't know anyone here who doesn't, but anybody who knows people at HL7 knows that we might have some issues at HL7 around personal attacks at least. So I encourage you all to read this and be aware that we do have that policy. That's enough about that. So I encouraged you all to come and be part of the FHIR community, the HL7 community, but a deeply overlapping communities, not the same thing. But I encourage you all to do that. But why would you do that? It's okay to come to DevDays, a meeting, work will pay you for a meeting, and you come and you go home and it's fine. But to be involved in the community is to retain that connection, to keep connected with chat.fire.org, to join phone calls, to make your own comments, and to go to meetings, to put your treasure, your time and your energy into the HL7 community or the FHIR community. Why would you do that? And look around the room and I know that a good half the people in this room do that to some degree or other. Some people like me do that all the time. It's about all I ever do now. It becomes a way of life and hopefully an income, but it's a way of life first. Why would you do that? And I've been actually writing a series of blog posts on my blog. Why participate in the FHIR community? Let's make it a bit bigger. For those of you who care, I will post the link to this in chat.fire.org. But, you know, it's not hard to find my blog. And this is a series of posts I was going to run in the lead up to the HL7 San Diego meeting, which was 8 weeks ago, and I'm still working through this series of posts that didn't go to schedule. Why would you participate in the FHIR community? And so I've been working through different participants in the community. I have yet to post on why government should be involved in the FHIR community. I'm a little bit, I keep getting writer's block on that one because I live in Australia, so that's a problem. I'd like you all to read this, to read my posts, and come and tell me if there's other reasons I haven't talked about. I know there's other reasons I haven't talked about, and they're on my schedule, but come and tell me. There may be ones you know that I haven't thought of. Come and tell me. Come and show this to other people. Why would you participate? It's good for you personally. It's good for your companies, your employers, for you to be an expert. So why not do it? Come and participate. So I encourage you all to participate on an ongoing basis. And if you already do, that's great. I really appreciate that, and thank you. And we can all, well, there's a point at which you stop being able to contribute any more than you do, but most of us could contribute some more. Lloyd's probably the only exception. Because people come to me and say, when do you sleep? Lloyd never sleeps. Okay. In fact, you know, a while ago I was in Vietnam, and I thought, I wanted to introduce Lloyd to someone I was talking to. I was talking to a little, a young Vietnamese woman, Thuy, who's, Thuy translated, not FHIR, but Thuy translated the entire stack of CDA documentation. And so CDA spec, the CDA schema, the version 3 data type specs, the RIM, I won't go on, but it was a stack of paper this thick. She translated the entire thing into Vietnamese. And I was so taken by that idea that someone actually did that work that I wanted to introduce her to Lloyd. And I was like, oh, it's only 2 o'clock, Lloyd will be awake. It's 2 o'clock in Vietnam, not 2 o'clock in Australia. And Lloyd was asleep. But he woke up when I Skyped him. Lloyd, where are you? Wake up. And he woke up. And then I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't want to wake you up. Sorry. But the only time I found Lloyd asleep. Okay. By the way, the Vietnamese are translating FHIR to Vietnamese right now. There's one thing to say about the Vietnamese. When they're going to do something, they're really going to do it. All right. So, but what happens then is that all of you give us your treasure, your time and your energy. Money's just this other stuff that helps, right? But that's not what counts. What counts is your time, your energy, your passion. And you come and you give that to us, the community. And we, as a community, the FHIR community, is nothing more than the repository of all of your treasure. So we have this treasure chest, which is FHIR. And it's critical for us to honour that treasure. We share that treasure. That passion, that energy, the output of all of that is treasure that we don't own that treasure. We're custodian of the treasure on behalf of everybody. That's why people gave it to us. And it's a mission you can never get distracted from. And we live in a world today where zero-sum thinking seems to dominate. Where if you give something to me, I take it from you. You can't both benefit from an interaction. And yet that's not how we work. I think it's how very much of the world works. And you're going to see, I fear, some very solid zero-sum thinking in the healthcare standards world in the next year. I can't talk about it right now, but you'll see it coming. You'll see organisations that have been given treasure, the treasure I'm just talking about, the voluntary free donation of a community who believe in the mission. They've donated their time and materials to an organisation that then turns around and sells it back to them. And as they're going to, it can easily do, abandon the idea that it's not their treasure, that it belongs to the community. We don't want it to happen here. The FHIR community won't let that happen. And that's one of the reasons why we went for such a strong open source license. In fact, the Creative Commons license that we use for FHIR is sufficiently strong that the open source community doesn't even rank it as an open source license. It's around arguments, deep technical arguments about patents and copyrights, because we don't actually have a copyright on the material. So, but that's why we took such a strong license, because we must protect the treasure of the community. And I will be working as hard as I can behind the scenes to ensure that other communities continue to do that too. So watch that space. But it's critical that we protect and grow the treasure that you've all given to us. Now, on the subject of treasure, we continue to see a world, as I said, dominated by zero-sum thinking and really dumb decisions made in a bigly fashion. It's always important to pay attention to the provenance of information. And I've come to feel that we don't pay quite enough attention to that. I thought I killed my mail, sorry about that. We don't pay quite enough attention to... sorry, so much for that. We don't pay enough attention to provenance. And here I'm now talking about the FHIR provenance resource. How many people have actually written or created a FHIR provenance resource? There's more hands than I expected, but it's not many. And the EHR vendors as a whole have been curiously uninterested in the provenance resource. And I think we're seeing in the general media about why provenance really does actually matter. So I think I'm going to be encouraging people in the FHIR community to pay more attention to provenance. And that reminds me, actually, I missed something. To go back to talking about treasure, if it's true that we are an open, trusted recipient of everybody's treasure, if that's true, then it behoves us, it's good for us, to be as good a steward as we possibly could be. And it's really hard work for a community organisation to be as good as it can be. Because everybody who serves that community volunteers. and you can't sack them. And it's really hard to get people to work together in the organisation. The organisation should do this, or should it do this, or should it do this? Should it work this way or that way? What's the most important threat to the community? What's the most important opportunity? It's really hard to get the most motivated people of all, who totally and utterly agree about what the community is trying to do, to agree about how to do it. Because the hardest thing of all that we do is get people to agree. Lloyd's got this lovely phrase that he uses, which is pushing people with a rope. Volunteers are really hard to manage because you can't, they do their own thing. And so it's an ongoing challenge for HL7, for the FHIR leaders. It's an ongoing challenge for us to be the best stewards that we can of the treasure that we've been given. And that's across the board with what we do. And we're continuing to work as HL7 and improving our processes and getting them right to serve the community as best we can within the framework of the rules that we work under and the resources we have and so forth. So that's a matter of, that's part of what I wanted to say about building our treasure. And if you think that we're not, if you think that we could be doing something better, by all means come and tell us, or volunteer to resource something better. That would be even better, that would be cool. But that's something that we continue to work on. And again, it's hard to work with people. And if you're someone who thinks in the fairly short-term outcomes, if you're that kind of person, and I couldn't possibly be thinking of any number of politicians from any number of countries around the world right now, but if you're one of those people, then you look at the difficulties of working with people, and you go, it's too hard. I don't need to do that. I can just do my own thing and think about life as a zero-sum game, and I'll make things great again, when you're doing the exact opposite. Because you're destroying the basis for collaboration, the community that makes this, where the sum of the parts is greater than the parts by themselves. Don't do that. Continue to invest in collaboration. Continue to invest in community. Obviously, I believe that about the FHIR community, but I believe that about any number of other communities as well. The communities, we are stronger as a community than we are as an individual. I choose to live in Australia in this tiny little community on the edge of Melbourne, which is fiercely parochial about the community, because we're kind of like that touristy village on the edge of the city. And we love our village and we hate the tourists and we love the tourists. But we work very strongly as a community. There's a Facebook page for the community which has about 100 contributions a day, which people seem to keep up with, because we're passionate about community. So it's not just the FHIR community to be passionate about. And in a time when the politicians seem hell-bent on destroying the communities they're part of, one way or another, don't. Build community. There's a lot of headwinds against that, and it's silly to pretend that there's not. But that doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile building something better. Now, on the subject of building something better, we started working on FHIR 6.5 years ago now. And about 6 months, maybe a few months after I started working on it, I sat down with Lloyd and they were out in a hotel in San Antonio for Sunday morning breakfast. You guys remember this? And we sort of laid out a plan. And the plan was, well, we just had this feeling that if we did FHIR well, I think we knew it was called FHIR then, but it was just an idea. But if we did it well, then it would lead to outcomes in health, not just in health IT. And we laid out a plan, and the plan was that we would develop a standard and we'd get people's attention, and then once people were paying attention, we'd publish a normative standard, and then the world would start implementing it, and then we'd start getting impact in health. The plan that we had was not the plan that followed. A few things changed. First of all, we realised that that we needed a gradual development process. There wasn't going to be a single normative version. And we thought we'd get to normative quicker. But what happened was, when we finally got people's attention, the world went nuts. And we had more attention than we could possibly deal with. And the implementation process ran an order of magnitude faster than we expected. And we got so much feedback, we realised that our initial process plans were naive, and we actually moved some things forward and some things backward, which is why we're only talking about normative 8 years into the process. HL7's never had a standard like that, where, and in any other standard, if we had gone 8 years before the first normative standard, people would be saying, well, that was a failure. But we're doing things quite differently. And that's a testament to the passion and energy in the community to make that happen quite quickly. To grow implementation much more quickly than we thought, and then to hold off the formal standardisation, because actually learning how to do things before you bake them in stone turns out to be a good idea. Now, that brings me to this diagram. How many people have seen this diagram before? Good, lots of hands, especially if you've heard me speak before, because people come to me all the time and say, hey, the Gartner hype curve, where are you on the Gartner hype curve? Well, where are we? Let's do this way. If you think we're about here, put your hand up. Yeah, a couple. If you think we're about here, put your hand up. Yeah, a few. What about sliding down the trough? Do you think any hands up for that? A few. Yeah. It's about even so far. Down at the bottom of the trough. Any hands for that? There's one hand for 10 minutes left. Okay, good. All right. What about up in here in the plateau? Does anybody think we're in the plateau? Oh, I'm glad to see that we've got consensus then. Yeah, I mean, people often ask me about this, and so I actually have this on my wall at home, in my office at home, so I can think about this. Where are we on this? I used to say that I kind of hoped we were getting up here because we were still going up here rocket fast, and what was the peak going to look like? And now I don't know where we are here. I used to say, when I spoke about this and when we talked about it as a team, I used to say that we can't control the hype up here, the inflated expectations. We can't do anything about that. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that occasionally I launch a broadside at some journalist or journal article, or newspaper article, which I think is suffering from inflated expectations. I say, hang on. We're not a silver bullet. We're not the answer to everything. We don't want inflated expectations. In case you know, the thing that we have inflated expectations about is, look, I believe in FHIR. Obviously, it's my baby, and you guys here, most of you, I guess, believe in it. But what we know is that health is hard, and you can solve all the technical problems with interoperability, but you haven't touched the real problems with interoperability, because interoperability is about the people. And we don't solve those problems. Our culture is the best shot I know of working on those problems, but it's not yet solved. And so if there's anywhere where I think there's inflated expectations, it's in the fact that a lot of people think that FHIR's nailed interoperability, or alternatively, it suits people to say that for whatever reason. So that's what I was paying attention to. So what I always say is, if we can make the reality as strong as possible, if we can make the community strong, if we can make the technical specification strong, then the trough of disillusionment won't be as low as it could be. And so that's what our focus has always been, is to make the trough of disillusionment as shallow as possible by making sure that the real quality is there in the specification. So thank you everybody here for making that to be the case, helping us to make that to be the case. And I no longer have any idea where we are in the year. In 10 years, I suppose I might have a really good idea where we were in 10 years ago. But now I just don't have any feel for it. I feel as though I don't know where we are. But the thing is, just if the quality's there, then that's all we can do. And yesterday I was interviewed by a journalist, a Dutch journalist who writes about e-health. And when I was talking to him, and it was just after we'd seen Google presentation, and I listened to the chatter around here and things people are talking about, and I've been around the world in the last few weeks, meeting with people and talking to people about where we are with FHIR and seeing stories, increasing number of media stories, and people. What happens is there's a few people around the world and when they see a media story, they tweet with a copy. They tweet at Grahame, Grieve, and so I get all the notifications and read them all. And in the last few weeks, and particularly at this conference here, I felt as if I'm starting to see the tipping point. When we set out, we had this idea that we could change health, not just health IT. So it's pretty clear by now that we've changed healthcare IT. And we've transformed people's expectations of IT in healthcare. We're not done. We are a long, long way from done, but we've done the transforming of expectations. Now we have to do the delivery. But the expectations have transformed. People now expect that there is a workable ecosystem that they can use if they want to. And that's one of the things that's most amazed me. We set out with a clear idea of what a RESTful API and a proper spec could do and enabling all the stuff around that. But what has really filled out the picture for us is the rest of the picture, the CDS hooks, that kind of stuff, filling out an entire ecosystem picture. If you went back to HL7 5 years ago and said, you could have this, we would have been like, wow. That complete ecosystem where you can actually put together full solutions that work. Yeah, we're not done yet, as I keep saying, but that we've transformed healthcare IT. But this, in the last few weeks, I felt as though we're starting to get to the point where we're at the tipping point where we're starting to change health, where the capabilities that we create, the ability to, as Rolf said, to interoperate with people, APIs to other parts of the healthcare system, to modularize the healthcare system and build greater parts that together collaborate to build an even greater whole for health. That's starting to be on the table. Not done, but I'm starting to see it now, that we can actually change health. And what I say to people, and I say to my family agrees, and we talk about this on a regular basis, I will keep doing what I'm doing. Leading FHIR, pushing as hard as I can. I will keep doing what I'm doing until the care provided to my family and our social network changes. So healthcare changes. That's what we're in here, to change healthcare. And I thank you all for joining us and helping. I hope you all hope for the same outcome and look for the same outcome, to transform health. And of course, lots of other things need to change. It's not an IT problem. But IT was a problem. If we can move IT away from being a problem and underneath the system, tilt the system so that good outcomes become easier, there's a lot of clinical people, there's a lot of clinical leads, patient advocates who want a better system and see how it could be. And tilting the system will make it easier for them to transform health. And increasingly that's what I'm going to be focused on, and we as a community need to focus on is how to transform health, because that's real outcomes for real people, and that's what we're about. So thank you everybody for coming to DevDays. Thank you for contributing to FHIR. Thank you for making the dream come true, and hopefully we'll see more of you and more contributions. And we can look forward to lots and lots of interesting and fun times in the next few years as we start to bite into health itself. Thank you very much.